Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You can tell that we're at a little bit of an inflection point, you know? You can tell that things have gotten so bad for the left that their hand is now being forced. They're forced to have to reconcile with the way that they've acted, and you know, if they lose this election, which a lot of the data is indicating is exactly what's going to happen, they're going to have to probably go through a total remodel, a makeover, a party reform. Now, is it going to happen immediately? Probably not. The powers that be, the Democrat establishment, seems quite reluctant to make any change, and they certainly don't want to cede any influence. But regardless of the pushback that's going to happen from the higher-ups, it's going to have to happen, and it's going to have to happen at a grassroots level, just like we saw with the RNC, for instance. Something is going to have to change, and I welcome that change. And I really do think that change is coming. I don't think the Democrats are going to have a choice. The current system that they're running, let's call it, is not sustainable, and you can tell that the foundation is cracking. You know, even the most ardent of leftist supporters are frankly done with the crap. They're done with it all. And the one person who seems to be spearheading this call for change is none other than the TYT's Anna Kasparian, who really is just the based gift that keeps on giving. At this point, I think I might even be willing to say that she is my favorite leftist. She seems to be one of the only people on the left willing to tell it like it is. She's simply hitting the nail on the head on a pretty consistent basis here. And you know, at some point, I think the rest of the left is going to have to slowly start waking up, following in her path. I mean, what other choice do they really have here? But anyways, let me show you guys exactly what's happening. This clip is absolutely amazing. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so we've been covering this story of Joe Biden calling 75 million Americans, or you could even argue half the country, floating garbage. And what have we seen from the left? We've seen a bunch of copium. We've seen a bunch of, attempts to paint this false equivalency that Donald Trump is always calling leftists garbage. No, he's not. He's referring to people like Adam Schiff and the rest of these deep state actors who are actively weaponizing the justice system and spreading constant lies using the mainstream media as their proxy. They've done all the whataboutism that you might expect. And then, of course, some of them pretending as if Joe Biden didn't actually say that, or doubling down and, saying that they essentially agree with Joe Biden. In other words, we've seen a whole lot of copium, a whole lot of nonsense. But finally, we have one leftist willing to just speak the truth.
Can we just please not provide cover for our leaders when they make mistakes like this? That was a terrible mistake that Biden made. It should not be justified. Again, if you're a private citizen and you have your personal views about the Republican electorate, that's on you and that's your business. You have not taken an oath to represent the country. You're not the president of the United States. And I don't know why anyone would think it's a good idea to celebrate or applaud political culture in this country that allows for the president to just regularly trash tens of millions of people that he himself is supposed to be representing. That is not a good culture to set. And things will just continue devolving. I don't think that this is a winning thing to do. I'm not proud of what Biden did. And honestly, the thing that frustrates me even more is that after he made those statements, even though he was on video making those statements, a bunch of people are totally gaslighting about how it didn't happen. It's totally made up, it's fake. It's a scary world that we're currently living in, where a lot of people, a lot of voters, a lot of people in the media, just not based in, their views are not based in reality at all. And they would rather lie to people in order to cover up a mistake or a terrible act of an individual in a position of power. I don't even recognize what's happened to the Democratic Party anymore, to be honest. And luckily, you have people like Kamala Harris pushing back, and I'm really proud of her for doing that. And if you're offended by it, be offended by it. I don't really care. I see the direction that the country's going in with this type of divisive, disgusting rhetoric from people who, again, went out of their way to get elected to represent the people. When you make that decision, when you are awarded that position by the people, you need to represent the people, including the individuals who decided to cast their ballots for someone else.
Why is it so difficult? That's the question I'm asking myself. Why is it so difficult to just say what needs to be said. It's an unsustainable practice. You know, the left has gone utterly insane. They justify horrible actions, they justify rioting, political violence, calls to violence, horrible rhetoric. They justify this constant reference of 1940s Germany and, of course, the small mustache leader of the time. They're so all over the place, they're so extreme, they're so deceptive and deceitful. You know, at some point, it's going to be too much for people to handle. At some point, they're going to start having to act like adults. How else can I say it? At some point, the crazy rhetoric and the deceit, the lies is going to have to stop. And it's people like Anna Kasparian and others, it's courageous leftists who are going to be the ones to make that happen. Because the simple fact is, at least in my view, is that the left cannot continue doing what they've been doing. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize it. You know, this is why so many Democrats are jumping ship. There's too much that people are simply unwilling to associate themselves with. I mean, that's what happened with me, for instance. I was your typical kid going to college, watching Jon Stewart and John Oliver and Bill Maher, caught up in that culture, and I was just a leftist. Now, of course, I was more of a classical liberal, but then I started to notice how things were devolving. I started to notice all the craziness, and I was in a room with, frankly, a bunch of clowns, and I didn't want to be there anymore. I didn't want to be part of the circus. Well, that's going to continue happening if they continue to do what they're doing. You know what's the perfect example, actually? The Kamala HQ Twitter account, or X account. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys aren't on X, and so you haven't been exposed to it, but we've exposed what they've been doing in a couple videos here. This Kamala HQ account continuously pushes the most outrageous lies you can imagine. You know, the average duration of the clips that the Kamala HQ account posts is somewhere in the 7 to 20 second count. In other words, they're constantly taking clips completely out of context and misrepresenting what's happening. Look what they just did with JD Vance, for instance. They posted a 16-second clip omitting all the context and wrote, "Vance says that Trump is going to send federal government after Americans who don't support him, saying there will be consequences." It's a straight up lie after lie after lie. People who have a shred of intellectual honesty and accountability, at some point are going to see this stuff and say, you know, this is like Soviet-style Russian propaganda. I can't associate myself with this. Calling half the nation garbage? I can't associate myself with this. Then attempting to pretend as if that never happened, and actually there was an apostrophe and Joe Biden meant something completely different, is absurd. And again, people are probably thinking to themselves, I cannot associate myself with this. It's become so utterly insane. People want the temperature turned down. They want to have real political conversations and discussions again. They want to focus on what matters. Ding, 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 policy and cultural issues. But the left just keeps going on. Our opponents are literally fascists. Literally Hitler, we're fighting for our rights and freedoms and democracy. I mean, come on. All it takes is having a conversation with literally any conservative for more than 5 seconds to realize how absurd those claims are. Yet the Democrat establishment continues to run with it. Another point of contention that seems to be really leaving a sour taste in people's mouths.
I'm telling you, the good news is that I believe women will be the beacon in this election.
Am I losing my mind in feeling that this hyperbolic rhetoric is not helpful?
Yeah, well, 50-50 in my opinion. So when Debbie Dingell says he's going to start internment camps, he never said that. That is not helpful. On that, you're 100% right. Because once she says something that he didn't say, then not only the right wing, but independents will discount every other thing you've said. Not just every other thing you've said, but every other thing that anyone on the left has said. He never said internment camps. Don't say that.
I want to make a distinction between Donald Trump, the person who says and does racist things, and the notion of a fascist. Because look, if we're just going to use fascist toward anyone we dislike, all right, then the word doesn't actually mean anything.
Okay, what do you want me to say, Anna? You want me to say wannabe dictator?
Sure, you can say wannabe dictator, but I don't even think he wants to be a dictator.
Of course he does. That's what you do when you lose an election and you go, oh, I got fake electors and I'd like to terminate the Constitution.
Okay, so if you think he's a fascist, wouldn't that justify taking physical action against him?
No, because that doesn't help. That devolves us further into fascism.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's a difference between somebody shooting someone, that's fascism, and saying, I disagree with them, don't elect a fascist prick who says only white people are awesome and everybody else is garbage and should be banned. No,
Look,
I'm not gonna take a chance with a monster like that.
I know, you're focusing on whether or not you're gonna vote for him. I don't give a damn about that, and that's not what I'm asking you about, Cenk. I don't think that this rhetoric, especially from elected members of Congress, is helpful at a time.
I don't agree.
Okay, all right.
Okay, Anna, why do I not agree? Because Trump's helpful is rhetoric?
No, his rhetoric is awful.
Okay, if you don't want to be called fascist, stop saying fascist things. It's not that hard.
Okay.
Not that hard. Oh, here, let me have dinner with Nick Fuentes, who's a Nazi, Kanye, who's a Nazi, and let me say there's good people on the Nazi side. Oh, it could be pro-Confederate guys. Might be guys who are pro-slavery who are good guys. Let me do all of these things. Let me say that immigrants are poisoning the blood of our nation, a Nazi term that is only used in the past by Nazis, and then say I'm gonna ban Muslims, I'm gonna do this and this and this to all the other ethnic groups, and then go, oh, I can't believe you called me a fascist. No, he is a fascist. I'm very happy to call him a fascist.
You know, sure, Cenk Uygur provides a little bit of pushback, but Donald Trump really is a fascist. But at some point, there's not gonna be any pushback, especially not if Trump wins here, and then there's 4 years of economic prosperity, freedom, and no wars. I mean, what's the left gonna stand on at that point? Nothing. You know, it's gonna come back to haunt them. You told us it was gonna be World War III, nuclear apocalypse. Donald Trump's gonna put us all in cages and gulags, and he's gonna ban books and ban history and ban black history and take away our rights, dismantle the Constitution, dictator on day one, yada, 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 and none of that happened. At some point, the chicken's gonna come home to roost. At some point, it's gonna be blatantly obvious that they've been lying this entire time, as if it's not already obvious enough. And at some point, more and more people, probably millions of people, are gonna go through what Anna Kasparian has gone through. And that right there is the moment where the left is gonna have to have a serious, let's call it identity crisis. They're gonna have to have a serious moment of introspection and realize maybe it's time to pivot, maybe it's time to reform, and I truly believe that that's happening. It's gonna take some time, but it's gonna happen, because what's going on right now is obviously not sustainable, and even lifelong leftists, Democrats, and even Democrat politicians, they're done with it. They're abandoning ship. They're saying, I've had enough of the craziness. It's getting out of control, and I just will not associate myself with this anymore. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys. Just another based Anna Kasparian moment that I figured I could extrapolate to a more meta point. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.